My name is Lara Setrakian. I'm the president of the Applied Policy Research Center of Armenia, and I'm truly delighted to be speaking with former President Jorge Quiroga of Bolivia, an esteemed member of the Club de Madrid. And we're going to be talking about a crucial topic facing humanity. What are the costs and consequences and the ethics of letting technology speed forward unchecked? How the algorithms shape our lives and what we do with them? What will become of our societies when human interaction goes down and the power of tech platforms goes up, up, up? Mr. President, you are not just a former head of state. You're an all-around fascinating person, and you are uniquely qualified to talk about this topic. You built large-scale technology systems at IBM. You've worked in business and technology at the World Bank and the IMF. And at the Club de Madrid, through the Club de Madrid, you work to promote democratic leadership and good governance around the world. So you are watching these technologies zip ahead of our capacity to know what to do with them. So let's start with this question, Mr. President. Of all the major tech-driven disruptions you see today, and there are many, which ones really need our attention in terms of the costs and the consequences to society?
Thank you, Lara. Pleasure to be with you again. I'll begin by making a comment about algorithms. I've watched the engagement and participation, and my algorithm tells me that the late night sessions have more active participation. So I do not know if it's the topics, the time, the food, or the wine, but that's the best time of to be in this place. The technology has evolved a lot. You said I didn't build IBM systems. We installed them. We sold them large systems in the 80s. I've forgotten more about computers than I'll ever need for the rest of my life. But it was very different in the 80s. I used to tell my daughters, when I was in school and your girlfriends dumped you, it was through a letter with a postage stamp. It's not in Facebook. It's not like one of those dramatic things. And I do not know how young people break up today with the social media. How do you stay away? It's beyond me. But in my days, it was different. And in the 80s, life was different. YouTube was like the London Underground when you went there. Twitter was a little bird chirping. Amazon was a river in Brazil. Apple was a record label for the Beatles. So it's a different, totally different world. I would say the following changes that are taking place are important. We can spend a lot of time. I would point out three in particular. One, the advent of blockchain and Web3. For the ones of you that do not follow it, the world changed dramatically. First, when IBM and Apple invented the personal computer, that's the first time you could take work home, actually, and work in a diskette, remember, and go back to work and plug it in and put the spreadsheet and the text. That was, for the young people, that was eons ago. Then the advent of the internet, Web 1, you could surf the web and get access to information. When I was young, if you wanted to get educated, you had to go to the places where knowledge was deposited. A good university, and there were very few at home, or a US or European university where you had the knowledge, the information, and the processing. Now the knowledge and the processing is available everywhere. And that changed with the advent of Web 1 and then Web 2, the platforms, Google, Facebook, that yes, it connected us all. It helped democracy a lot. Now it can hinder democracy as well. But it made the platforms extremely powerful, and it had a devastating impact on the availability of media. You know the story, all the media groups have basically been destroyed. And if you want to run for office in Latin America now, I would ask anybody, would you rather know the owners and the editors of the media groups and the TV groups, or would you rather be good friends with Mark Zuckerberg? Probably the second, because that's where most people get their news. But now we're on to Web 3. Decentralized, the promise of the internet of decentralization, when you have a world where whoever produces the video, the information, the content, the data, owns it, timestamps it, and has like a birth certificate. And therefore, if I am a media group in Guatemala and I produced a video, I don't have to wait for Facebook to tell me at the end of the month, or Google, how many hits you had and how many cents you get, but rather I get to monetize the production of content, which is probably, in theory, potentially very healthy. People think of blockchain as crypto. It's more than just crypto. We can spend a lot of time on that. But in essence, is the true promise of the internet, of decentralizing information.
So that's good news.
That is potentially very good news, but of course you have the other side. When you have the blockchain world and you have crypto and then you can do money laundering, let me give you some news. You could always do money laundering. At least in crypto, there is a digital trail that you can follow and chase everything down. Because many times we tend to blame technology for things that happen good or bad. It was social media puts us in little enclaves and it's all polarization, and we always had that. With papers and radio, soap operas of a couple that is normal are boring. But she goes out with somebody else, he goes out with somebody else, and the son is a drug addict, and the daughter is doing whatever. Those are the ones that catch our attention. So we actually, unfortunately, the effect of social media is multiply that severalfold. The second tendency, Lara, I would say, on what it is the algorithm. You talk about the algorithms. One, that if I was working with a digital platform, but was trying to compete with a product with TikTok, let me tell you, we talk about the algorithms many times on the Facebook and Google, and we seldom talk about the algorithms that are on the phone that are reading the user. Let me tell you, this little device here knows more about any of us than our spouse, our children, or anybody else. Because a phone is a tracking device with so many sensors, and the applications, and TikTok is a premier example, they do that better than anyone else, is reading, they are reading the user. They have 14, 15 sensors, pressure, angle. So if I'm a Barcelona fan, TikTok will know within no time, or any application, because the way I hold the phone, the angle, the camera is looking at me while I'm looking at the video, I'm frowning, I'm opening my eyes, and that scary amount of information that's being provided. I have friends that have told me that when every voter has a cell phone, there will be platforms that know the result of a free and fair election the night before, because you do not lie to the phone. You can lie to the pollster, but you do not lie to the phone. So the algorithms from the cell phones to the user are one part. And the third and last part, of course, is artificial intelligence, the processing algorithms. I don't know where you were on November 30th, 2022. Probably watching the World Cup, as we all were. That's the day actually Argentina was playing Poland, Messi against Lewandowski. It was the day of that game. Well, ChatGPT came out. And then now everybody perhaps knows on a widespread basis the impact of artificial intelligence and processing. A lot of promise, a lot of scary parts to that too. I don't like to too much dwell into the fact that artificial intelligence can speed up the destruction of mankind. I think we do a pretty good job of destroying ourselves without artificial intelligence. This morning, thank you, Usta, I went to the memorial. There was no Facebook, there was no artificial intelligence. And this heart-wrenching genocide took place in 3 months, where the 1 million people were gone in 3 months, and there was no artificial intelligence. Putin invaded Ukraine and took Crimea without artificial intelligence. We can do a lot of damage to ourselves without artificial intelligence. But there's something to be said for the fact that processing, not just information, but processing, will be widely available to everyone with ChatGPT. And the best way to show a product, and I remember in mid-December, I had my grandfather, we were at a birthday, I said, oh, artificial intelligence. Like when I started working with IBM, my father said, computers, we'll never see those in Bolivia. What are you doing? No. Same thing, artificial, oh, no, they're those social media tools. And I said, okay, write me a speech in Spanish for a grandfather proud of the granddaughter graduating with honors. Brrr, here comes ChatGPT. I said, oh, well, that's pretty nice. Or, ChatGPT, I don't know how many of you here can program. I used to be able to program. In Python, I can write a small program to count how many times somebody watches a video. It take me a long time. You do it on ChatGPT and it comes back in 2 seconds. So it's dramatically going to change the way we do law, education, programming, and it has a great amount of potential. But anyway, these things will change and the world will be different, and we're living in the middle of exponential change. So fasten our seatbelts because it's going to keep changing.
And there's more coming. There's quantum computing, the whole architecture of security as we know it in the digital realm, digital norms. So what is the cost? What happens if we don't figure out how to regulate the pace of change and the practice of these technologies? If it basically goes unchecked at its own speed, which is what we pretty much have now.
Some good things can happen and some very bad things can happen, and they're long list. I would tell you the following principle applies to legislation and regulation of the tech, digital, artificial intelligence sector. There's an old saying in Spanish that gets graffitied around. Just when we learn the answers, they change the questions. That is so much true of the digital world. Just when you start to legislate and regulate Web 2 type platforms, they get completely decentralized. And just when you start to maybe regulate the use of social media and its impact on elections, you get artificial intelligence. And yes, it'll be a never-ending race. I'd say two things about this. It is a scary prospect. Just think of a campaign. A practical example. You're trying to run for office in a campaign. Now with AI, I can produce videos of you saying things, and now by the time you disclaim it, too late, I already maybe got the votes. Or I can just lay in bed and have real videos of me promising things and doing things, and I can do a lot of different variety of things. Now imagine the amount of disinformation you can generate through the back-end artificial intelligence processing and the amount of user manipulation that you can do with an algorithm through the phone. It is a scary prospect. And I don't want to get into the geopolitical aspect of it. I think, Facebook can be used to manipulate. Google's, Twitter's, belongs to one person in particular. TikTok is owned by ByteDance. The Chinese TikTok, which is Douyin, cannot be used, of course, in China for politics or to say anything bad about the rulers. But its sister product or cousin product, TikTok, can be used. So if you're running for office anywhere in Latin America or Africa, and you say, who do you want to be best friends with, Mark Zuckerberg or ByteDance? Maybe ByteDance. So the combination is scary, and how do you best regulate it? It's going to be a never-ending race, but I would suggest the following. In this war between the US and China, that they have the gigantic platforms, the US has Google, China has Baidu, US has Instagram, Facebook, and here's WeChat and digital payments and what have you. I would suggest Europe regulation may not be perfect, but it's state-of-the-art. And I would suggest that Africa and Latin America, with massive amounts of population, Africa has a lot more people than Europe. In Latin America, we have more people than Europe, but we do not have the heft to negotiate with the big platforms or the social media groups. So have a little syndicate behind Europe of, say, Africa and Latin America, at least, I don't know how we engage Asia, on trying to regulate this quickly evolving landscape of the digital tech world.
Europe has clearly taken a lead and has some political will, some coherence on this compared to other entities in the world. How will that work? Will it really protect users in other corners of the world?
I think so long as we synchronize and coordinate, it can do wonders, because it is the reality. It is. Look at the previous world. When the powers of the Facebook and the Google, would they have changed things for a Peruvian newspaper demanding the monetization rights so it wouldn't have to shut down based on the news it produced? No. The answer is no. For Brazil, yeah, maybe, perhaps because it's got more heft and muscle. So it's a volume business, it's a scale business. And if you have the small ones of us left to fend for ourselves on trying to regulate Google's or Facebook or much less ChatGPT and what have you, we cannot get there. We need the economies of scale of massive amounts of groups and the ability, because in Latin America, you may not like the EU Commission, but at least they have a framework. Latin American integration, the old line, what's the phone number? What's the email? We do not have a Latin American place that you can say, where do I do Latin American-based regulation? Where do I do African-based regulation for technology? At least Europe has a place, more expertise, and we need more synchronicity on how we do these things. And by the way, to a couple things, it is the developing world had more impact on social media Western platforms, US platforms, than even countries inside the US. The limit on 5 forwards and groups of 254 on WhatsApp came from a Brazilian election. The banning of TikTok, they talk about it in the US and Europe, India is done it. So we have something to bring to the table, and maybe India can take measures, and Brazil can take measures. But for them to be effective and benefit everybody in our developing regions, we need to group together with Europe, at least Africa, Latin America, and some Asian countries.
Are there general principles that you think can carry over and protect users and societies no matter where the technology goes?
I would say the discussion, I don't have any real direct prescriptions, but I would say the discussion is going to flow along 2 lines. Data and processing. I'll go back to my IBM system engineering days. When you install big systems, you have lots of dumb terminals spread out everywhere and cables and communication devices. But the main room where things happened, you needed raised floors, very cold air because it was heavy duty, and you had the storage devices and the computers. In today's world, that is going to be the discussion. The data, where is it housed? It's my data, sovereign data. I want it to be now. Are Google, Facebook's, the platforms going to house the data in each country? Maybe not. But perhaps Europe's data will be housed in Ireland. They have to. In Europe, you have that type of regulation because you cannot legislate or control data that is often Nevada or Shenzhen or wherever else. So the discussion on the location of data to be able to have whatever legislation you do vis-a-vis privacy, security, and what have you, it's impossible to enforce if it's in Nevada because somebody else's turf, so to speak. So at least now, are they going to put clouds and servers in Bolivia and Paraguay, Uruguay? Maybe not, but perhaps in Brazil. That's why you need regional level of at least common denominators vis-a-vis data protection and security and what have you. Now, on processing can be the same thing. Just if having my information is scary, imagine when we get to the time where when you go to the judicial system, you will get an AI-driven verdict for 90% of things.
Is that really coming?
But that is, yes, I've been to events where that is, I mean, the AI is better right now than 80% of the lawyers. Now, of course, and I'll say something about this at the end, but it is very productive. Now, you always read about the man who sued the airline Avianca, and the lawyer did an AI, and the AI made up something. It's like when a Tesla car crashes, right? Oh, a Tesla car crashed, big news. A gas-fired cars, we crash them all the time, and it doesn't make the news anymore. But it will start to happen. You will start using it. I guarantee you in the judicial system 10 years from now, it'll be judicial verdicts based on the input that you give it, subject to human, real person with a robe review. And in countries like mine, that'll do wonders because you don't have to bribe the judge. The judge has to prove that he's overriding the verdict from the artificial intelligence. So it'll be, you may not like it, but that world is coming. Now, when that comes around, the discussion on data privacy and sovereignty, and it has to be close to me, it can't be in Nevada. Imagine that when it comes to processing. And here comes the difficulty. It is impossible to have large-scale artificial intelligence that is completely decentralized. Maybe it will evolve, maybe it will change, but those tend to be very energy-intensive. The cooling is outrageously expensive. The energy that it demands is out of the sky. And the more centralized it is, the better it is. So that'll be a never-ending challenge. I would say the old adage applies. I guarantee you, when we put in place answers, legislation, regulation, the challenges will have changed. So you have to stay in tune, stay abreast, and perhaps broader principles are better than detailed prescriptions because this changes so fast, but by the time you give the detailed regulations, they're totally obsolete.
Friends, we've been together for 3 days. You know the drill. If you have a question, please go to the microphone. I will keep looking. We'll keep going until and unless there is a question out there in the crowd. So you've used the word sovereignty a lot, and sovereignty seems to be coming up more and more as applied to tech. Chip sovereignty, data sovereignty. What about your sovereignty? When we were chatting a few days ago, you said that if your phone knows, or TikTok, anyone of the platforms, knows that you love Barcelona and then runs an ad saying, Barcelona wants you to vote for Jim, suddenly you have a tendency to vote for Jim. Isn't that a violation of your sovereignty? And how do you protect yourself from being manipulated?
It is a never-ending challenge, and I can tell you that the sense of privacy has changed with generations incredibly. I can tell you for a fact that I am very glad that in my high school years and my college years and in my 20s, there's no social media, because if there was, and they had filmed me, they would have a lot of material.
I didn't ask you about that you volunteered that.
Yeah, I know. But you do wonder, everywhere in the world, 18-year-olds that are at a party, live streaming everything, putting it on Facebook and TikToking it away, one day they're going to want to be mayors, congresswomen, presidents, what have you. And it's, somebody, what lives in the internet lives forever. Trust me, you know how it goes. It's books you can wipe out, you can burn, and everything. Internet in the cloud, it lives forever. So yeah, it is a difficult issue, and I think platforms and major aggregators depend on government regulations. So when the platform is based on the US, it depends on what the regulation is done over there. Facebook has had this attempt of this Global Advisory Council with some people that I know that are very good to look at whose account you bring down or up. And theoretically it works that way, but in the end it's one person that decides. And when it's convenient, you do not bar Trump from the Facebook. When it is convenient to take him out, you take him out. Now we'll see a few months from now if it's convenient or not to have him be reinstated. So it'll be, but that's one part, the Facebook. At least you see it and you discuss it. Now with TikTok and China and the data, TikTok swears that ByteDance does not have the data in China and everything else. So we only hear about that because that fight is between China and the US and Europe. But we don't talk about it when it's between Rwanda and California or Bolivia and Shenzhen. And we need to be able to participate in that discussion.
What about all those cell phone sensors reading your face? I mean, you bought that phone. Is there a secret setting we all need to know in order to keep ourselves?
Yes. Well, I mean, you can always do. I think that's part of the regulation discussion, right? The default settings should be you can't be tracked, you can't be looked at, and everything else. And you can always on the cell phone, like you do with your computer, right? On the camera, on the front camera, you can put a piece of masking tape when you're using it. But it's how do I say this? I think it's kind of an old-fashioned concern. Because today's youth, it's, the more cameras, the more transmission, the more live streaming, the better it is. And yes, it is a model by which you can monetize it. And that's why TikTok is so addictive, because it's not just tracking how much time you spend per video and the way it is set up, but it's the reaction of the user. And I've seen the processing. You have a young person watch 14, 15 videos, and the profile of that sector, just by watching and the way they react to a video, is if you and I were both talking to the person doing therapy, it would take us 2 weeks to find out as much as you can through the phone. But that's the way the world works.
Let's go to a question over here. Introduce yourself too.
Thank you for the talk, Your Excellency. My name is Manak Ghosh, and I'm an AI researcher at MIT. So you talked a lot about large language models and how they're basically a duopoly at this point with very large companies that own these models. Where do you think there are opportunities for startups or others from more developing countries such as Rwanda or Bolivia to enter this ecosystem? Or do you believe that it's going to be a case of the rich getting richer with both AI and data kind of consolidating to the winners? And as a follow-up to that, we've talked a lot in this forum about digital public infrastructure. Do you think that large language models will eventually become digital public infrastructure run by governments for the benefit of their people? Thank you. Looking forward to your thoughts.
Very good question. You should be part of this panel, and I should be down there clapping for you. The large language models, there seems to be a duopoly. I was at an event where Amazon told me they're also coming up with theirs, so I don't know if it's going to be three-way. But let's not forget about China. I think one thing that is not really looked at is the following. China had a great advantage. The reason the TikTok algorithms were so effective is because brain power is evenly distributed across the world, and the number of young engineers in China is 4 or 5 times the number of young engineers in all of the US and Europe combined. And they work, like my friends in China tell me, 996, from 9 to 9, 6 days a week. That's, my daughter works at Google. Trust me, those are not the work hours in the US. And another friend told me, no, it's not 996, it's 007. It's from midnight to, and they code up. But in the last few years, there was a big clampdown on China tech. And they went after Alibaba and everything because they need to control what gets said on social media. So perhaps they lost an advantage there vis-a-vis this large language models, which if you subject them to extreme state censorship, you lose a good bit of what you can do with that in terms of the control. So, but we are yet to see what China what China will come up with. I think your question on will they then become, let's not say government-owned, shall we say public goods that are evenly distributed and available everywhere? Yeah, that'll be very, very interesting to see how that evolves. I think we forget that at the very beginning, and the reason the developing world made a leap is that we could not build the telephone copper wires fast enough when we leapt through cell phones and we caught up on the data and the information. And perhaps, I don't know exactly how, there is a window there whereby the large language model itself, as opposed to being a Microsoft or a Google or maybe an Amazon product, is a public good product. And then the opportunities come on designing products that are based on that taken as infrastructure, not as a proprietary product, exactly the point you're making, but rather as infrastructure that then you can develop through that processing and artificial intelligence capability, all types of products for education, for health, for judicial reform and what have you. I mean, the sky is the limit. But one thing I've learned is when this world comes around, you can spend a lot of time talking about the apocalyptic dimensions of what could happen if it goes unrestrained. It will keep on happening. And somebody will keep on doing it. So we have to get public policymakers to move a little faster. But the second point you posed, it's very interesting, and I'll start using it.
We're going to hear all three remaining questions very quickly.
Right. Thanks. I'm Frances Pon from the Spanish Prime Minister Office. I really appreciate the point you made that you would advocate for Latin America and Africa to follow the lead of the EU. But my question is, what if that's not enough? The point is that with digital goods, and basically you can move this or use it from anywhere. So it can be outside the jurisdiction of the countries of the EU, the countries of Latin America, the countries of Africa, but still affect them in terms of disinformation, etc. For instance, there was one example before the AI era. Lots of disinformation related to the Trump campaign was coming from Macedonia, if I'm not mistaken. So no way this could be controlled from the US. So what about the prospects for global regulation? I think that's far away, but what do you think about it? Thanks.
Over here.
Good afternoon, everyone. Two questions. The first one, AI needs human data for it to function properly, right? So if there's no human data, AI won't be accurate. Now, second question is this. The godfather of AI, Geoffrey Einstein, in May, put a spanner in the works about AI, artificial intelligence, and everything when he said, when he quit Google and warned of the dangers of AI in May, first week in May. And he said, I have come to the conclusion that the kind of intelligence we are developing is very different from the intelligence we have. Now, if Elon Musk, Geoffrey Einstein, some Western governments have all of a sudden set up committees and all to look at the dangers of AI, what is the existential risk of what happens when AI gets more intelligent than human beings? And what do we do when AI-infused data goes rogue? Thank you.
So my question is,
Your name?
This is Amit Shukla, founder EasyGov. The AI, as everyone is talking about, runs on a data. Is there a policy discussion happening where I get a complete control of my own data, including my digital footprint, so that whenever I want, I can erase myself completely from the digital world?
I'm going to add my question, and then you have 1 minute for all of it. You have a grandson growing up in Silicon Valley. Are you worried about how all of this will shape the world he ends up living in by the time he's old enough to be president of Bolivia? If you take something like the impact and influence of TikTok and play that out over his lifetime, what do you see? Okay. You have a minute and 10 seconds.
Well, I'll do them quickly. First, I'll start with the Google question and the guy that said, yeah, I developed AI, and now that it's out there, it's your problem. I quit, and I left. It's there's some very scary warnings, and yes, anything can go rogue. But again, I would ask you to think of what I said at the beginning. We can do a lot of damage to each other without artificial intelligence, without computers and everything. I realize today's missiles are basically a computer, if you look at what they're being used. And the Vietnam War, you'd read Chip War from Miller. You see, in the Vietnam War, you sent the missile and it landed 500 feet away. Now it is a flying computer, so it lands right on place. So we already have a lot of the capability. AI can exponentially move it, computers can move it, but that world is coming. And I think the intent of saying, let's pause, it's fine, but there's not going to be pause because other people in China and everywhere else are not going to pause. The point on my data that Ahmed makes, I think you can do what some people do, return your cell phone, your computer, and go live somewhere on the world. Like when I grew up, we had all newspapers and black and white TVs and everything else. But it's if you're using an electronic device, yeah, there's tracking. I have some bad guys back at home that are linked up with Cuban friends that like to know where I go, so I don't have roaming on my phone. So they don't know that I went to the memorial area this morning, but yeah, they'll see it in social media. I think it's, you can take precautions, you can do things, but in the end, if you're on the grid somewhere, someone will know. The last two questions on the EU and my grandson. The EU regulation, yes, I understand very well that what Francis was saying, that the best thing would be global, but my frustration is that when you try to do global regulation, the interested parties are at the table. When you go to the UN, and I'll say more of that at the end, that is where, and the Security Council is where issues go to die. They never get fixed. They never come out. So if you try to regulate AI and you have the big platforms, US and China at the table, you can theoretically discuss it in a way that's universally enforced, but I don't think you'll move ahead. So the reality is, yes, you have to do EU regulation, and I understand you can do VPN. I go to China, I get a VPN, you can still get your Gmail account through the VPNs. Please don't tell them when I go, but I think they know it's kind of a tolerated thing. It's yeah, but I think yeah, the regulation for it to be as broad as possible is Europe, Africa, Latin America enough? Clearly not. And I know that no matter what rules I do in Bolivia, and trust me, I advocate for my friends that fighting for democracy in Venezuela and Cuba. I collect all the trolls and bots, and all the farms are after me, and they call my mother bad names. And there's no way to stop it. It's just the way the cookie crumbles. But I would suggest the broader you do it, the better it is, and at least Europe, Latin America, and Africa is a good start. And on my grandkids, I have two actually, a grandson that was born and a granddaughter that is there. It'll be a different world. And if they keep growing up in California, I'm afraid they probably won't need to learn how to drive even. And one day they will tell me, Grandpa, why do you drive? Why did you waste so much time driving when the car just, you can be on your phone while the car is working? But anyways, so they'll have a different life. I don't know, but I can tell you that when I go and my daughter's and driving her Tesla starts talking to me, while we're going on the road, I tell her, I'm a little too old for this. I want to see one hand on the wheel, even if it's just decoration. The last point I'll make on this, yes, artificial intelligence is here. Do not forget what Kasparov, the chess player, said. He was the first man that lost to the machine. Probably, I don't know, Bobby Fischer, Carlsen, maybe the best chess player of all time. And he lost to a computer. And he said that the best chess player will always be a human being with a computer next to him. I would say the following. The best lawyer will always be a good lawyer with artificial intelligence with him, or the best doctor, or whatever field you pick. So let's try to use them as tools and not scare each other so much with that. And I hopefully for a long time, the best government dignitaries will be the best statesmen or stateswomen possible with all the help of the technology and the tools that are available. Thank you.
Mr. President, thank you so much.